Hello, everybody. Adam Parks here with another episode of Receivables Roundtable. Today, I am here with my longtime friend. This is Katherine O'Brien, who is the Chief Compliance Officer for United Holding Group and a frequent speaker at various conferences, webinars, podcasts as it relates to compliance. I asked her to join me here today to give us some updates on all of the different compliance issues that have been happening around the industry and how things are kind of getting started in 2022. So, Kat, how you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. Always a pleasure to see your beautiful face.
Oh, well, greatly appreciated. I thought I would learn a little something today, so I wanted to have you on this series. Can you tell, for anybody who's not familiar with you, and I'm sure if people are watching webinars, podcasts, going to conferences, they probably come across you just once or twice at least, but can you tell everybody a little bit about your background and how you got to the seat that you're in today?
Sure. It's a secret, so don't tell anyone, but I'm actually from Florida. I believe not too far from where you are. Ironically, I went to law school in New York, which now New York, every time I hear that state, like, what have you done to me now, New York? I practiced in real estate in Florida for many years as a trial attorney, done hundreds of trials, believe it or not. And then I ended up in beautiful Colorado, where I was really looking forward to get back into the court system. And I ended up at a collection for a regional debt buyer doing actual in-court collection. So I've done collection work. I've done the defense work, and I moved into compliance, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago. And oh my gosh, do I love it. It is so hard. It is so much more work, and it's a constant battle. And I really enjoy the challenge. And I'm not even being sarcastic. Like, it is fun to have to learn all these and be agile and get to meet great people such as yourself. And you're just constantly learning what not to do, and mostly what not to do these days.
And not to break these rules.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, it is an evolving environment, right? Like, and you get to kind of stay on the forefront of a really rapidly changing environment.
That's right. I mean, when Reg F dropped like a hot album, I mean, that thing was a mission to get through with all my little flags and my notes, a highlighter. It was like all the geeks out there were like, this is heaven. And I was one of them. Those are my people.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. Look, the world needs all types of people. And I think it's great that there's somebody out there, that there's groups out there that are helping us to not only read through those things, but help us interpret them. Well, look, some of us need help interpreting those things. Not all of us are lawyers, right? And we need help interpreting what is happening from a regulatory or legislative perspective.
Thank goodness.
That's important. Thank God for people like you.
Thank goodness there are non-lawyers out there to keep the world safe.
To keep the work coming. So you are currently the Chief Compliance Officer for United Holding Group. Can you tell us a little bit about the organization and what you guys do there?
Sure. It's a national passive debt buyer. It's a great company. I've loved it. I am actually their GC too, so I get to have my hands in everything. Mostly the compliance, the auditing piece we all love. As you know, being a debt buyer, there's a couple different levels to pretty much everything you do. We have collection strategies through agencies as well as law firms, and just constantly growing and building out all those partnerships, as well as with our lovely bank partners. And you get to meet a lot of great people, and there are some just honestly smart, amazing people in this industry. And I love that position. And hopefully they don't hate me, because I audit them constantly, and I'm a little bit strict. I try to be. I think you have to be.
You're helping them to improve their businesses through the audit process. That's how I like to look at it at CompliArm.
Yes, that's how I look at it from the bank audits, as it all trickles down to the expectations. So again, it's really challenging. It's a lot of fun. I learn something new every single day. Sometimes it's positive, like, oh, that's a great idea. And sometimes it's, uh-oh, I'll be right back. And let me go update my policy real quick.
Sure. Look, and I think that's part of the process. But now that we've been going through this transition, so Reg F came out at end of last year, and Now I'm sure there's some updates to all of that because it's been out in the wild for a period of
Right.
time. So what are you seeing out there? How has the Reg F environment evolved since it came out?
The roaming Reg F issues out there in the wild. Um, yes, I have been dorking out completely on some of the new cases. There are about, I think, 15 to 20 published cases out there, or filed, I should say, although who knows how many there are in little state courts trickling across the country. But I think it's really important to read these lawsuits and see what are people getting sued on already.
Mm,
It helps you become proactive, to go out there and actually see, okay, they got this, these people may have gotten busted because they called someone 20 times in a week. And you're like, okay, come on, guys. We've talked about this for 15 months. Okay. Eye contact. I'm looking at you 7 times, 7 by 7, guys. Get consent, write it down. So when you see these lawsuits, and I can't wait to see what happens with them, because I really want these guys to defend and say, our records clearly show it was 7. This is, because back in the day, people were like, I got these phone calls repeatedly. I'm like, we've never called you once. What are you talking about?
mhm.
Because it's really easy for consumers to get confused by who's calling them potentially. And then you
Mhm.
get a lawsuit when it wasn't even your account that they're calling on. But 7 by 7 is the one that I've seen a couple suits on, and the opt out on those electronic communications,
Mhm.
that they're not having the opt out on their emails. And again, we've talked about this so much, guys. Come on. I love all the
That's
new
also
technology.
standard though for like email practice. It's best practices, the Can
Mhm.
Spam Act. I mean, there's so many other things that play into
Yeah.
having an opt out on any email that you're sending, whether it be marketing or solicitation or whatever.
No, email's a
Kind of feels like it's
really
par
new
for the course.
technology.
Yeah.
Email's super new. We've only been using it for 20, 30 years. So I get like text messages. I mean, the 90s were just yesterday, according to me and my music tastes. But so the opt out, I feel like it's a really easy way to get nailed on something so
Mhm.
simple, is that, and we're a few months out, like, check it, test it, go back and make sure it's working. Because I know we spent so much time getting all this stuff lined up and it's beautiful, but is it actually working? Because things break all the time. Templates break, coding breaks.
It's
So
true.
test it.
And putting yourself in as a consumer to receive those messages might not hurt either, so that you can actually experience your consumer experience. It's one
Yeah.
thing to have a consumer experience officer or whatever the case may be. It's another thing to actually just experience it yourself.
Yeah. So that's what's going on with Reg F. And I'm, again, if you have any cases, send them my way. I love seeing this and see like what people are doing. I've seen a couple on the model validation notice, but not too many yet.
Mhm.
But some of them are really ticky-tacky, nitpicky, and I really wonder whether they're just looking for that easy settlement money, maybe.
Mhm.
The quick nuisance value. I don't want to go down this road, and I hope they're defending them, because again, like, that is just a terrible precedent to set for these guys coming out. I know one guy actually, he was complaining about some of the things that on the model validation notice, the CFPB said, you have to put this, what else can you do? And he's like,
Yeah.
well, that's overshadowing. I'm like, I'm not sure
But
about
part
that.
of that too, I think, is the consumer attorneys testing their boundaries, right? They've
Absolutely.
been looking at this industry as a meal ticket for such a long time. They want to figure out how are they still going to eat. And I've seen a lot of them. Like if you look at the back ends of their websites and you get a better feel for who they are, maybe just research them a little bit. You kind of see that we're generally not the only industry that they're going after. They may have a particular site or a series of sites that are attacking the industry itself, but generally speaking, they're going after Subaru for airbag issues and everything else, because whatever ambulance they can chase, they're going to get behind and chase.
So have you worried about my Subaru now? If you have me worried, add that to my list of things
That
that,
was, I actually found that on one of the
my God.
consumers websites. Yeah.
Oh
One
my
of the consumer
gosh.
attorney websites, that they were going after auto recalls. And so they had, I think, 5 or 6 different manufacturers that had recently issued recalls. And that was their next level of attack, because they've weaponized search engine optimization. And honest, I spend a lot of time in that space from a technology and content
It's a
perspective.
very sexy terms, like a search engine. I can't even say it.
Search engine
I'm gonna,
optimization. Speaking of SEO and emails and text messaging, are you seeing anything else in the digital communication space?
not yet, but I also think there's this backlog of these plaintiffs. I mean, they have 10 more months of lawsuits. They wait till the SOL date before they really file. So I think there's still pre-Reg F cases that are going to keep coming through, and then it'll start to shift. So there's a couple of eager beavers that went out there and immediately started doing the Reg F to test the waters. Like, I think you're absolutely right. But I still think a lot of them are just going to stick to their bread and butter and file those suits that they had on deck. But the digital collections, again, I love that we're finally getting the blessing to text message people 20 years later. I think that's fantastic. But for people in my position or, agencies, hopefully you have an audit platform, because whenever you start to roll something out, you always got to make sure you have the scripts, the policy, the procedures, and audit yourself, because you're going to get audited by somebody else, like myself, the banks, the creditors. There's plenty of people who are going to be looking over your shoulder. So if you have that, make sure you're checking it. I know that's really one of my big focuses since Reg F is making sure everyone's doing the text messaging properly, following the scripts. They have the opt-out. That's the number one thing. I've been talking about that since April of last year. Like, you're going to have the opt-out, right? You're going to put the opt-out, everyone? You got an opt-out, everybody?
I would hope so at this point. Again, it's opt-out was not new with Reg F. Opt-out on email was all the way. I forget what year the Can Spam Act was, 2004. Again, not a lawyer.
I didn't think there'd be math on this. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, the auditing is really, like I said, my focus right now in the best way to overview this. And, you don't want to get too crazy early on. It needs to be something that can grow with the platform, over time, because it's not going to go away. I think it's just going to get sort of bigger, more complex. So start out small, hit all the big tickets, like I said, the opt-outs. And now it was Reg F, call caps, the frequencies. I've learned some amazing pivot tables on Excel lately so that I can make sure everyone's, staying within those 7x7. I know, right? I'm an attorney and I'm sitting here.
I like it. I like it. We can sit down. We can talk
with the count function
all day. I mean, look, that's how I learned how to evaluate and stratify portfolios. I mean, back before we had more complex systems and data tools to bounce things off of. I mean, it was old school spreadsheets and pivot tables.
Fancy VLOOKUP.
But speaking of the old school, even though Reg F has come out, we still have a lot of things that are still in play from pre-Reg F days. What are you seeing in that space? Like, are we starting to see any kind of increases in the suits, or have people forgot how to, walk through a door now that they've got a more complicated,
it's because they're texting, they're looking at their phones, texting. I have noticed it's not quite yet a trend, so I'll have to touch base with you in a couple of months, but it's been interesting on some of my call monitoring where I feel like people have they're so focused on the new requirements. I got to leave this limited content message exactly right, which I approve of, stick to the script. But they're forgetting other things like the recording disclosure, maybe. So I've seen some interesting, I thought we were past this, guys. We learned how to do this years ago. Why are we forgetting these little checkboxes? So I think the more you add on to people, and I get it, it makes sense. These collectors have the hardest job. I absolutely believe that. And it's just, now they have all these other things, making sure they're documenting the consent properly, the time, place, manner stuff, getting, that permission, getting the text message permission, email permission, there's a lot of things to keep track of. And I think they're starting to lose sight of some of the easier stuff that they've been doing for years, like verifications and the recording disclosure. So I'm kind of worried about that. All that stuff that still applies. Nothing has changed from the FDCPA. It's just been tweaked, added more, but all that old good stuff, Mini Miranda, it's still alive and very well. So there's definitely the call monitoring hasn't really changed. It's just added a couple more levels. And I think people are, it's great that they're focused on the new.
I wonder if that's part of it, right? Is that the training that they've been through lately, previously training was all inclusive up until the point of Reg F, and now it's become more Reg F focused because that was the new thing. And I'm wondering if there's maybe some training gaps there, and that rather than incrementally building on top of what already existed, they refocused. And so, and if you're not they forget how to block and tackle because they're worried about throwing the football down the field. And that may be part of the equation there.
I do believe that it's going to go back to normal. It's just the initial, it's been 4 or 5 months now. And everyone, like you absolutely nailed it. everyone's focused on the 3 or 4 big Reg F items, and they're not focusing on the stuff that they've been focusing on for the last 50 years about the right calls and the right scripts and everything. So I think it'll go back to normal soon. And I expected there to be a dip in like call scores. Like I anticipated that when everything rolls out, there's going to be this adjustment period. And that's why, a little extra oversight of all of my partners to really try and battle that and anticipate it, work with them, help them any way we can, train them. Well, not train them out there with the football, right? Running down the field.
To evaluate the training that they're going through to make sure that everything is being included and nothing is ultimately being forgotten.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it'd be fun to get up there in front of the collectors and actually conduct training again, but I much prefer sitting here.
Yeah, I used to do that. I thought it was fun. The collectors come up with the best, like weirdest hypothetical questions. And I'm just like, I have no idea how to answer that question. Where did you come up with that scenario? Oh my God.
You got to, I mean, some serious consideration to some of the scenarios that I've been thrown over the years. And, I even went through the process, even though I've never actually worked as a collector. I went through collector training and made the calls. And if you're going to learn a business, learn it from the ground up. And that's always kind of been my motto and everything I've gotten involved in my life. You got to shovel before you can, move into management. So
that's the only step is shoveling and then your management.
Yeah, just straight to management.
Awesome.
I had a short path. What can I say? Because then I went to school in between shoveling and management.
That's a pretty impressive shovel. But yes, so
in terms of other changes that we've seen, privacy is obviously becoming a bigger and bigger issue these days. What are you seeing in the world of privacy?
Mostly like night terrors. For me personally, trying to understand it. As you may have heard, the GLBA, the safeguard rule, has been updated. And although it goes into effect in December of this year, which might seem like 1,000 years away, yeah, no, it's going to feel like tomorrow in no time. And I'm trying to personally understand it and make sure that all of our policies and procedures are in line. We have California. So that was a big push years ago. That's still out there, still alive and well. Colorado is coming up. I got my board of all my state issues that I have to look at constantly. Indiana, Washington, of course, New York. New York's got to be special. I love New York. Even Hawaii has some new privacy stuff to come out that you don't think about. So there's a lot of states to watch. It'd be great if they
do something federally so that maybe like these things would jive and compliance could become a little bit simpler. But I wonder if that's just not.
That's a whole other hour seminar of that.
I think we're gonna have to bring on some other attorneys for that one too. I know quite a few people who might have an opinion on that.
Can we do like maybe one of those cage matches where we have a couple
lawyers? I think y'all actually would be going in the same direction. I think y'all would be believing kind of the same fundamental ideology behind what should happen in terms of the standardization of privacy, because I don't think that you're going to find anybody in our industry, or very few people in our industry, that are not pro-consumer privacy. Like, yay, right? Like, we want privacy, give them privacy, like privacy for all. But like, just tell us what the rules are.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's like,
tell me what to do, and I will do it all day long. I promise.
Tell me what the rules are. It's like
we have to wear pink on Wednesdays, right? Isn't that like the Mean Girls thing? I will wear pink.
We will wear pink on Wednesday. It's like learning to play chess and not knowing what each one of the pieces does, right? Like, how can you strategize a scenario or a situation when you don't necessarily understand how the parts move? And can you imagine playing chess where each one of the squares had different rules?
Yeah, and then every once in a while someone just comes and smacks your hand away. And says, no, that was wrong.
Knocks everything off the board and is like, start over again. Like,
okay. Yeah, no, I love that so much. I'm stealing that. You'll hear me say that for the next 10 years now.
That's cool.
But
I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm one of those guys with a chessboard in my office. What can I say?
But it actually opens up into a bar, right?
No,
like one of those globes. I was one of those globes.
That's the globe. The globe opens into a very Mad Men style.
One day you might see a globe behind my desk, and I promise you it will probably be full of water. I don't think it's like dark liquors. I don't know.
Evian and Fiji's. So as we kind of get a little closer to our time, I know that you're you're always looking forward in this industry. And although a lot of your job is managing the present, you and I often
It's
talk
it's
about the
like
crystal
30 days
ball.
behind, right? I'm constantly looking a month in
Well, you're
arrears.
you're looking back, but
Yeah.
in our conversations about the compliance crystal ball, we'll call it, you have always kind of had that at least one eye or a focus on what's going to come next so that you can be prepared for it before it crosses your plate. So like, what do you think is coming over the next, let's call it 6 to 12 months in the space?
Um, well, I don't know about the next 6 to 12, but I do think in the next years there's going to be a lot more oversight over law firms. Reg F sort of skirted around the law firms directly. The proposals, they had talked about some of the evidence and meaningful attorney review,
Mhm.
but that didn't make it into the final cut. So I think it's still on the radar. And as you may recall, there was a bunch of consent orders around 2014 through, I don't know, last year. Last month, maybe. So those consent orders are still alive and well. And I think they're going to start applying a little bit more to law firms because they really came in kind of strong about, the original account level information, documentation that was necessary. They've, made it clear that you have to file these things with a court, a default, for example. And they've even put some hints on some pressure on how discovery is supposed to be held in some of the consent orders. So I think the next step that they might come in and actually push some of those requirements on law firms more. I mean, like I said, the Reg F, I know a lot of law firms who said, does this even apply to me? Whatever. And then we had to go back and say, yes, the model validation notice applies to everyone. That's still a thing. Can you read this, please? And I'm sure there's still some small people, some small agencies and law firms that maybe didn't get the memo about Reg F yet. And I hope they do soon because they're gonna get hit with a lawsuit and they're gonna learn real quick if they haven't. But I do think law firms are definitely, making sure that they're up to the same standards of agencies. And for a while they've been treated separately. And oh, they're lawyers, they have their own bars and their own ethics to adhere to, so we don't have to worry about them as much. I think we do have to worry about them as much, maybe even more. And I also think that a very unfortunate side effect of Reg F is that I think it's going to push more accounts into legal because they're making it more difficult for these agencies. So I do think there's going to be just more and more people are going to be using legal strategies for collections, which I think then means more oversight on the law firms to make sure they're doing everything right. Like I remember I said how templates break, like, are your pleadings being merged properly? Is your attorney documenting in the system of record that meaningful attorney review? Do they have all the documents, all the media that they need to in order to file the suit before they file suit? All of these things that I think a lot of the law firms like, oh, this is common knowledge. We've been doing this for the last 5-6 years. Well, I think they might, codify it and make it hopefully not more strenuous on the law firms. But I think we might see some more oversight, maybe even, a couple additional rules coming down in the next few years on that. I hope I'm wrong. I always say with compliance, I hope I'm wrong.
We will continue to watch and evaluate and see what happens. And I have a feeling if we start to see those types of shifts, we're just going to have to bring you back on and continue this conversation as it relates to the regulation of law firms, and maybe bring somebody on from the Creditors Bar Association or something like that, and kind of get this into a more engaged discussion, which I think it'd actually be a lot of fun. Kat, I really appreciate you coming on and having a chat with me today, talking to our industry about what has happened over the last couple of months and where you see this industry going from a compliance and regulatory perspective. I always enjoy, and I learn something from every discussion with you.
Me too. I've been watching the series it's like crack for me now. Where I'm watching all the interviews back to back to back, like binge watching is right. Put it on Netflix.
Soon enough, we'll have to roll it out into podcasts and other things. For those of you that
thank
are
you
watching,
so much.
Absolutely. I always appreciate an opportunity to chat with you. For those of you that are watching, if you have any additional any additional questions for today, feel free to leave them here on LinkedIn or YouTube. Kat and I would be happy to respond to those. If you have any additional topics that you'd like to see us discuss and have her come back on the program, please leave those comments below as well, or give her a call. And Thank you everybody so much for taking the time to watch. I hope you learned as much as I did from today's discussion. Thank you, Kat. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. You're fabulous.
You too.